this is our late night session, going over how to prepare your IRB protocol. And we have Myra and Eva from the IRB office here to give the presentation. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to them.
Thanks so much, Lou. So, as she mentioned, my name is Myra and this is Eva, and we're going to be the go-to people for IRB as you are preparing your protocol, and then probably after approval if you have any other questions about your IRB. So this is how to reach us. Actually, let me start with what the IRB is. This is what the IRB is. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but basically we are here to ensure that you're protecting your participants. We are mindful of research involving human subjects, and we're going to do everything we can to inform you and help you along the way as you're conducting your research to, again, protect your participants.
We are not part of, we wish we were, but we are not part of your committee. We are not your advisor. Our jurisdiction is not methodology, recruitment, nothing like that. We exist to help you make your research compliant and to protect your participants. So that is our role. We're happy to talk about the other stuff, but on an unofficial basis.
Right. So this is our staff members, faculty, etc. These are the people that you'll most likely reach out to or will reach out to you regarding your IRB, including Paul Cran, Karen Froud, Kurt Nasser, me, and then Eva.
There is a full IRB committee, but these are the folks that you'll be in direct contact with. You don't need to write this down unless you want to. We'll make the slides available to you after the presentation, probably by tomorrow because we'll be a little late getting out of here. But feel free to just sit back and relax. Here's our contact information.
Yeah, so this is, so just to clarify, there's a time frame and day, Monday through Friday, 11 to 2 p.m. We're a fully functional office. We do get into the office earlier than that, but those are our active by appointment hours. So that's when we're engaging with students, we're taking your queries, we're dealing with protocols in the moment. So if you're calling before 11 or after 2, we'll still be there, but typically those are the office hours where we schedule appointments with students to walk through the individual protocols.
And I should say that we hope we'll answer all of your questions and questions you didn't know that you had this evening, but you will probably all have your own questions at some point during your own research. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. We're always happy to talk to you.
And so for our presentation today, we're going to try and cover the wide spectrum of IRB, and this is our agenda. If you have questions along the way as we're presenting, please hold off until the very end so that we can answer the questions at the very end. Most likely we'll have the answer to your question as we go through the presentation today, but then at the very end we can answer those specific questions. So for our agenda, do I need IRB approval? What's the timeline for research? We're going to talk a little bit about CITI certification and what that means for you. It is a requirement that we have for our departments. We're going to talk a little bit about the review categories and then the consent process and submitting your application, in which we're actually going to do a demo. So we're going to walk you through the actual process of doing a protocol. We're trying to empower you so that you can own this process, so that you can experience it from your own perspective, and we're here to help you with those extra questions. And that's our goal, is to try and give you that experience today so that you can do these protocols on your own. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what's next after you get approved, and then at the end, like I said, we'll take questions. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of questions.
All right, so these are typically the kinds of questions we get in the IRB office. Do I? How do I? What do I? I thought it was totally adorable. Who do I? Because it's an owl. Right, that's cute. All right, so my answer to all of these questions is, it depends. That is the IRB answer. It depends. It depends because who are your participants? What are you doing with your participants? How are you storing the data that you collect? What are you doing afterwards? What is the purpose of the project, et cetera, et cetera. So the majority of the times that I will respond to these questions, I will respond with it depends. So some of these questions that you may have that we're going to answer at the end, I may still keep responding with it depends. Until I can actually see your protocol in front of me to kind of weigh these factors, it's very difficult to try and give you a concrete answer. So as we go through this presentation, you're going to kind of get that capsule of information, but again, my answer will probably be it depends. So these are the kinds of individuals that often come into our office. It's these master's student that is doing research for class, the doctoral student that is doing, the master's student that's doing research that's for their master's project, the doctoral student that's doing research prior to their dissertation, and then the doctoral student that's doing dissertation research.
You might also have to do research for a class,
Yeah.
and that's fine, but that does not require our approval. Your professor would have jurisdiction over that.
Which we're going to talk about each of these 4 individuals that come into our office individually. So we're going to show you a little bit about what that means. So the student that comes into our office, it says, do I need IRB approval for research for class? It depends. That's my first answer. And then the second part is probably not, because we're assuming that you're doing research for just those members of your class. It's not going outside of the class. It's not going to be published. You're doing it for research practice. And we're deferring to your faculty classroom teacher at that point that you're abiding by ethical conduct, that you're doing work that's compliant, and you're protecting your participant. If you're doing work that is a master's project, some of you have to complete a degree for a master's project. Again, it depends. But in this case, if it's for the completion of a degree, most likely you will not need IRB approval because it is for the completion of a degree. And again, we will defer to your faculty sponsor in that way. There are exceptions, as there always are. If it's grant funded, if it's required by your faculty sponsor, if there's outside requirement to have IRB approval, or if the risk is above minimum, those are the factors that we're weighing in a master's project, whether or not to get IRB approval. The other case is that you're doing research that's prior to your dissertation proposal, right? So the timeline of events is that you might be doing a pilot study as a doctoral student, and then you have your dissertation proposal, and then you have your formal dissertation IRB, which is after your proposal. So all this pilot study work you can get IRB approval for, but again, depending on what you're asking and what you're doing prior to your dissertation proposal will depend on the approval level from the IRB or whether you need to submit it for IRB review in the first place. Now, the very last, if you are doing doctoral research after your proposal hearing, you must go through an IRB review. Does that make sense? So not your pilot study necessarily, but this is after your hearing, you must have IRB approval. All right, so there are some circumstances where research you did as a master's student was super cool and you want to do some further analysis with it. We're going to work with you on a case-by-case basis, so call our office, come visit us. We're going to talk about what this means for you individually. All right, just to summarize a little bit of what we've covered, this is the timeline. So from the very beginning, we're going to talk about CITI certification. Remember, I mentioned that a little earlier. We're going to talk about that more specifically in just a second. This basically means that you're going to be trained using free modules provided by TC, hosted on CITI, to get prepared for conducting research with human subjects. You're going to identify a faculty sponsor for your protocol. That doesn't necessarily have to be your dissertation chair. It could be somebody that is interested in the work that you're doing and is willing to be that faculty sponsor for you. You're going to prepare your work with that faculty sponsor. Methodology is all on the shoulders of your faculty sponsor. We at IRB do not have anything to do with methodology and your research questions. We'll weigh it if it's affecting the participant, but that is you and your faculty's conversation. Then the proposal hearing, if you're a doctoral student, then you do the IRB application. Then you wait for us, because we have to review it. You may get revisions from us that basically say to decrease the risk of to your participants, do these 3 things. And then you're approved, yay, you do your amazing research. And then you update the IRB office if you have modifications, which we'll talk about a little bit further in just a little bit. And then the modifications are when you're ready to continue your protocol. You do get typically a year of approval for each protocol.
Something to notice is where the IRB fits into this process. We're right in the middle of your timeline. So there's quite a bit of preparation for you, including the training, working with your committee, figuring out what your research is actually going to look like. The IRB becomes your partner once you have all of that in order. Notice also that step 7, happy researching. No research, no recruitment, no data collection can take place until you've received IRB approval. And you won't receive IRB approval until you are trained. So the CITI training is really where we recommend everyone starts. If you haven't done it yet, even if you're not looking at submitting an application to the IRB this semester, if it's not going to be until the fall, we still recommend that you do the training as soon as possible. Perhaps it will make you think of new things that you haven't thought of. Perhaps it might influence your methodology or the consent process that you had designed. Perhaps you're thinking of being a research coordinator or research assistant. In that case, you should be CITI certified as well. So it's never too soon to start that process.
All right, so just to bounce off a little bit of what Eva said, so CITI training is free. You can access it if you go to TCIRB's website. There is a menu bar on the left-hand side. And if you have your computer, you're welcome to bring it up now. You can see it as we talk about it. So if you go to
I have the direct link.
TCIRB, there's the direct link there. It's on the training and certification tab on the left-hand side, or the direct web address, which is up here. And remember, Eva said that we'll save this file for you, so you don't have to copy everything down if you don't need to.
And we'll go to those websites in a second, but just so that you are aware of what it is, it's free to you. Even though it's required, it's free. And
yeah, so any students or faculty that are primary investigators, PIs, but we'll probably refer to them as we continue on, but primary investigators need to be CITI certified.
Okay. Just a quick overview of what to do. You'll have to register. If you have been CITI certified through another institution, you'll still need to log on and affiliate yourself with Teachers College. So our little owls are reminding us there. Every institution has its own requirements. So if you have completed CITI training for your undergraduate university or the hospital in which you worked, they may require different courses than Teachers College. So you'll still need to log on, affiliate yourself with TC, you'll complete a questionnaire, and based on that, you'll be presented with any unfulfilled requirements. Mm-hmm. This is what TC requires, the basic course. There's 3 CITI courses that will be accessible to you for free: the basic course, the RCR, and the conflict of interest, or the COI. Conflict of interest is a very good idea if you are funded or if you anticipate getting funded, being funded even in the future. There's some valuable policy that's described in those modules that is not included in the basic course. They're free. It's up to you if you want to take them, but TC requires 9 modules from the basic course. The top 7 are pretty standard, and then from the elective batch you can choose 2 or more. Obviously the optional modules are optional.
So all of these classes are explained on the TC website, so it shows you what the criteria is, what you have to take through CITI.
At the end of each module is a short quiz. You will need to take the quiz. If you don't like your score, you can retake it as many times as you want, but your overall composite score has to be 80% or higher. So it's okay if you get 70% on one and 90% on the other. The average is what will determine whether or not you get the completion certificate.
And at the end, the certificate is a PDF file. You can just save that PDF file to your desktop, and the reason why I'm saying that is because later when you do your protocol for IRB, you'll have to upload that CITI certificate.
All right, we talked about this when we went out of order a little bit, but that's all right. So as Myra said, on the IRB's homepage, which we will show you, there's a link on the left that says training and certification. So that's where you'll click to find the CITI certification. There's also a link to the U.S. government's documents, things of FERPA and HIPAA and different policy that you may be interested in.
All right, so you completed your CITI certificate, you got your PDF file, it's saved on your desktop. What do you do now? Let's check out Mentor. Now, if you have your computer in front of you, go ahead and log on to MyTC. You'll see at the top part of the MyTC is a tab called Research. If you don't have your laptop in front of you, that's perfectly fine. All of this stuff will be explained in the slides, so you can see it later, and then we're going to demonstrate it in front of you all here. So my TC, you're going to see at the top it says research. You click on that research tab, and then you see on the right-hand side there is the term Mentor IRB. This is what Mentor IRB is all about. It's where we keep everything. It's information to help you create your protocol, and it's information to help you after you, it's information that you use to submit your protocol, and it's information that you use after you've submitted your protocol. So it houses everything.
We'll actually show you an example of each and every one of these things, but just to give you an idea of how comprehensive and useful the mentor system is and can be, it's not just where you submit your protocol. Our hope is that it will allow us to have a place to communicate with each other, a place for you to go to find more information. If it's 2 a.m. and it's a little too early to call the IRB office, but you have a question, we have a lot of resources there for you. It's also a great place for you to store your research documents. If you need your letter of approval, all you need to do is sign on to my TC, and we'll have it there for you. So you don't have to have your laptop with you everywhere you go.
All right, so this is the location of Mentor IRB, as we mentioned before. So it's very accessible, and it's housing all of your content for your protocol.
I'm going to skip through this because we're going to show you how to upload your CITI certificate, where to find the information, resources, and how to submit your protocol. So I'm going to pass through those slides pretty quickly so we can talk about an important component of your research, which is the review category.
Right. So on TCIRB, if you're on your computer, you can go back to TCIRB. On the left-hand side, there's several tabs or several side menu bars. There is a section that says Review Categories. So you're ready to start thinking about your research, you're ready to start developing your protocol, you're ready to kind of consider what you're going to do about this work that you're thinking of actually going into the field and collecting this data. If you go to TCIRB, on that sidebar, there's those review categories. It's going to explain it in much more detail than what I'm going to do right now. But basically, exempt is the lowest level of risk to participants. So basically, from an IRB perspective, is we're saying that the risk is so low, we're exempting this study from IRB review because the risk is so low. It's not anything outside normal instruction, or if it is, it's still very minimal risk. The second is expedited. The risk is a little bit higher. Maybe you're asking questions that could make the participant feel a little bit more uncomfortable. Maybe it's a situation where the status of the participant might be a concern because of the way the questions are asked. So those are the considerations we're going to give to expedited. So that means the risk is a little bit higher. Now, full board is where the risk is very high in comparison to the other two. You want to think of something like maybe drug trials, or you want to think of somebody hooking up someone to electrodes and giving them a mild shock before they do an exam. So all of those things are much more highly risky to the participant. Now, full board is a once-a-month meeting, and there are strict deadlines which we adhere to on when you submit that particular protocol. We'll talk about that in a second. The other two, exempt and expedited, which are more likely the kinds you're going to submit on a rolling basis, meaning that we review it in the order in which it's been received. Typically, exempt protocols will get reviewed in about 3 days, reviewed and approved, assuming that it is genuinely exempt and that the PI submitted all the correct information. Expedited protocols take about a week and a half, depending on if everything was submitted correctly. And then full board, again, is going to be on a month-to-month basis.
If you're not sure of your review category, talk to your committee, talk to your faculty sponsor. If together you are not sure, we'd be happy to discuss it with you. Every protocol is different, so it does depend. If you happen to choose exempt and the committee finds that it is actually expedited, it's okay. We can change that. Nothing bad happens if you pick the wrong review category. But it is something to be thinking about, because you should be thinking about the risk that your participants may face by participating in your study. Another important component is the consent process.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the consent. Depending on your participant population, it's going to depend on what kind of consent you get. So if you're working with adults only, and adults in this way are 18 and over, and they are capable of consenting, and they're not an at-risk population, then you would create an adult consent form, at which point you explain the content of your study, the risks and benefits, and what is required of their participation. We do have a template for creating this adult consent form, and we'll show you that in just a second. And we give a little bit of guidance along the lines of creating this particular consent form. Now, if you're working with minors, you're going to want to have a parental permission form and a student assent form. Now, this is minors 18 or younger, sorry, under 18. So under 18, minors under 18. Now, for parental permission, this is you writing a permission form informing the parent about the research that you're going to conduct with their child, the risks and benefits, etc. They give you permission to work with that child. Then you ask the child to review an assent form, at which point the language is child friendly, it's understandable to the child. If they're very young, then there are ways to frame the assent form so it's clear to the younger child. All children can choose to or not choose to participate, so we'll make that very clear to the student or to the child. And they sign or affirm that they're willing to participate in the work by signing that assent form. So parental permission and student assent form go together. Now the other is the site permission. Site permission is if you are collecting data, for example, at a public school. A site consent is that the principal has given you permission to be on that site location. Now that's really important if you're conducting research with students, because if something happens, you want verification that you have permission from the principal to be on that site location.
Don't be alarmed by all of the thought bubbles. It's highly unlikely that anyone will need all 5 of these things, unless you have mixed population of adults and minors. So the informed consent and participants' rights are for adults who are able to consent to give you their consent. The parental permission and student assent is for minors. If you are working with special populations, that means prisoners, that means children, that means perhaps students with disabilities, that means perhaps pregnant women. Those parameters may change if you're doing a clinical trial. So it depends, like we said before, but typically informed consent and participants' rights are for adults, parental permission and student assent are for minors. And the site permission may or may not be required. So case-by-case basis, like most of the things that we deal with. A final word, though, also about consent, is that it is a process. Consent does not mean a form. Yes, there is a consent form, but the idea of getting consent is bigger than just getting that signature. Yes, I've got my participants, locking in a drawer and then doing your research. Consent is an ongoing thing. The participant may decide after the first session that he or she does not want to participate anymore. That's okay. A participant may have a question halfway through the study and may need to reach out to you. So the consent form should have your contact information in there. Again, this is all designed to protect your participants and you. If the consent isn't handled properly, then your data may be questionable, and we don't want that to happen. So.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the IRB application, which will give us a chance to kind of walk through the process of what this is going to look like. We'll be able to show you what the view will be from your side when you're ready to submit your protocol. So there are typically 5 things that we're going to be dealing with per protocol. That's going to be stuff like the survey form, the protocol itself, the recruitment information, the consent forms, the research instruments, which will be maybe a survey or the questions that you're going to ask during an interview. So those are the 5 typical things that each protocol has or most likely has, although commonly it's the top 3. So it's the survey, the protocol, and the consent documents. Every protocol is different, so it depends on what combination will be for your individual protocol, but the top 3 are the most common that we see.
If you are recruiting via flyer or email blast, or if you've drafted a bunch of interview questions, those need to be submitted with your application, because part of getting approval means we've approved all of your documents. We approve the way that you are recruiting participants. We approve the way that you are gaining their consent, and so on. So a lot of times you'll hear protocol. Well, that's only one component of your application. I think.
All right, so
Time for an example.
here we go. So if you are at MyTC right now and you click on the research tab and then you click on Mentor IRB, so you're going to go back there. We're going to show you some of the things, there's the guide for it. We're going to show you some things that stand out, things that are going to be valuable for you as you are preparing your protocol. Maybe you can dig into some of this stuff and answer the questions that are pressing, things that maybe you need a template for. Everything is housed within Mentor IRB. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see, once you click Mentor IRB, there is something called PI documentation. PI documentation. If you're there, go in and click on PI documentation. PI documentation is where you're going to be uploading your completed CITI certificate. There's a tiny little itty bitty gray button that says upload. So you click on this little tiny button and then you can upload that PDF file. That's the first step for creating your actual protocol. Now once you do that, you're going to see, going back to the left-hand side, there's a sidebar that says documentation. Documentation is everything you need to know about creating a protocol. What is IRB? What am I doing this for? Some of the stuff we covered a little bit quickly. All of your questions will be answered in that section. So documentation.
Of the 5 things that we mentioned that are part of your application, we have templates for 2 of them. The protocol description and the consent forms. There's more than one consent document because depending on who your participants are. The survey materials and recruitment items, that's up to you. We do have suggested templates. If you want to give us a call or stop by the office, we can give you a template for a flyer, but we don't monitor those quite so strictly.
So if you click on the IRB application, it's going to open basically a fill-in-the-blank questionnaire. This is something you're going to work through with your faculty sponsor. You're going to go through this application with your faculty sponsor. It's going to ask you things like, what's your research question? What are you going to do with your participants? How are you saving this data? What do you plan to do with the data? Once you answer those questions where it's clear, you want to make sure that you're responding to it as someone who's not necessarily in your field, because you're presenting this to a review committee that comes from a wide range of backgrounds. So, but you don't have to spend 18 pages per question, basically. You'd be surprised some of the length of protocols we get. But just be clear, be direct, be specific, and answer the question as directly as you can. A little bit later down in this application form, there is a table. At the table section, it's going to ask that you describe every activity that you're planning to do with your participants. Now, if you're going to be doing a survey, if you're going to be doing an interview, if you're going to be doing a focus group, all of those things are where you're going, all those activities is where you're going to describe it. So do you mind spelling down?
Nope. Notice I'm typing right in there. You don't need to delete the questions. Don't delete anything. Just type right in here.
So the table I'm mentioning, if you have participants that are both, say, adults and students, so say you're interviewing teachers and then you're going to do survey questions with students, that's perfectly fine. Just identify which activity is happening with which population and how much time each of those activities happens with that particular population. So it may be something that teachers are interviewed for 60 minutes, not to exceed 60 minutes, and maybe the students are going to do a 15-minute survey. So just mark those durations so we know that this is happening with this population in your study and this is what's happening with the other population. At the very bottom, you're going to see this total hours of participation. You can break it up like that too. Total hour participation for adults, not to exceed 60 minutes. Total participation for children, not to exceed 15 minutes. Now, quick note on time. It is absolutely appropriate to buffer your time. So if you think it's going to take 60 minutes, you might want to give yourself 90, just in case. There's not a problem if you go under, but we start getting concerned if you're going like 4 hours, like 3 hours. So give yourself that buffer time so you know that the maximum amount of time for each individual to participate in your study is going to be 90 minutes. If it's less, great, they get out early. If it's more, that's where you're getting into a little bit of tricky stuff.
This is the only question on in the protocol that requires you to use a table. Everything else is pretty free form. Please don't change the table or change the headings. This is the information that the committee would like to know about your research. You can add more lines if you'd like to. If you don't have 3 separate things, you only have 1, that's fine. But the table itself should be followed as it is.
Yeah, so I think we're ready
Yeah,
for the
so
consent forms. Okay, so we're going to talk a little
let
bit
me
about...
save it real
yeah,
quick,
so
hang on.
she's going to save this so she can show you where to upload it when it's completed. So let me talk a little bit about the consent forms while she's prepping that particular document. So the consent forms, like she mentioned, there are 3. There's the adult consent, there is the parental permission, and there is the student assent. Again, all in documentation on Mentor IRB. If you open any of those Word documents, you're going to see that there are 3 colors. There is black, there is red, and there is blue.
Where?
Any text in black must stay there. Any text in blue is our little helpful guide and some suggestions that we've seen in the past. Any text in red is editable, so you can absolutely change, delete, cut, do whatever you need to do to make it your own. When you ultimately save your final consent form, keep it in all black text. Some people will turn in protocols with consent forms that is still in yellow and blue, or sorry, red and blue. Please save it all in black text. You want to think of this as the final draft. It just delays it a little bit for you if I have to download your document, then resave it, and then save it all in that black font. So, and that also includes, if you scroll down just a little bit, Eva, the footer. The footer has a page number in red. Make sure you change that to black as well. Again, we're just creating these color codes as a way to try and give you some advice and some tips along the way. Some of it's going to absolutely apply to everything you're doing for your study. Maybe none of it applies in the red text and you're going to cut it all out. That's perfectly fine. Make it appropriate for your study.
I'm just typing over what was given to me. It is not plagiarism. We want you to use this format.
Right.
Like Myra said, turn it back to black. You're deleting the blue. Those are directions to you, so I'll just highlight that and delete it. Obviously, I'm going to fill in the blank, and so on. Notice that the Teachers College contact information is on every page, and I would put my own information here, my name, my email, my phone number. Some of your participants may not be comfortable calling you on the phone, so keep in mind that email is a good thing to put on there as well.
And then later in the consent form, there's our contact information. We include that in the consent forms as well, so if there is a situation that the participant needs to reach out to someone in our office, they have that information as well.
I'm looking for that. It's at the very
it's
end.
At the very bottom.
There's a place, yep. Here we go.
There we are.
So
that actually goes to my line. Congratulations, me. All right, so okay, so that is the consent form. That's the adult consent form. There's, remember, the parental and the assent, which have a similar formatting, red, blue, and black. So again, you're modifying it for your work. Just another note about that assent form, make sure it's in population relevant language. So if you're working with younger kids, make that assent form understandable for those younger kids.
the participant's rights is built into the informed consent. That's why you don't see a separate document there. However, the student assent and parental permission are separate forms, obviously, because we want our parents to have their own form and the students have their own form as well.
Okay, so we do not have examples of recruitment flyers or recruitment scripts, but basically we're looking at the language is similar across all parts of your submission. So if you say you're going to work with adults for not to exceed 60 minutes, we're going to see that that's true in your consent forms and that's true in your recruitment flyer or your recruitment script. So just be consistent There are many protocols that I see that some will say 60 minutes, and some will say 90 minutes, and some will say 15 minutes, and it gets very confusing if there's inconsistencies. So just make sure you're matching all across the information.
Before we leave this page, gosh, you don't have a, it's not very clear for you, is it? I'm sorry. If you're on the site, the third item down, NYC DOE information, a lot of you may be doing research.
Sorry.
I think it's because it's the, maybe a laptop.
Does that help at all?
Anyway, there is information about New York City public schools. If you're going to be working with students in the public schools, you do need to follow New York City's guidelines. So they have their own IRB. There's information about that here. There's probably more information than any individual will need, but we tried to put enough here to answer any questions you may have. There's the blue dots are websites, and that first one there is information on review categories. Myra mentioned that you could find that here. That's where you go. It spells out exactly the criteria for each category of review. So when you're trying to decide whether you're expedited or exempt, go there and make sure that you are reflected in the category that you choose.
Yeah, and our goal for these kinds of training sessions is really to empower you so that you feel confident doing this kind of navigation on your own. We are your auxiliary team leaders on the side. When you get stuck, call us. When you get stuck, email us. But this should be an accessible process, and that's one of the reasons why we do these kinds of trainings, because we want to empower you. This is your project, this is your work, and we want you to take that kind of ownership with it. And we'll help you along the way if you get stuck.
If you can't find the information on documentation, I never remember the TCIRB website, so I just type TCIRB, and it is always the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, Google.
The link will be on those slides when you get it, but this is our homepage, and on the left-hand side, training and certification, that's information about CITI. Meetings and deadlines really only applies to full board review. If we go there, though, if you're thinking that might apply to you, you can see your materials are due several days prior to the meeting. We need to review your protocol before the committee meets.
And just to say that one more time, that's for full board applications only. Exempt and expedited are on a rolling basis. We review them as they come in. And these are firm deadlines for full board review.
The committee is composed of professionals from various backgrounds, and so the reason that we gather that way is so that someone who is knowledgeable about your particular research is present to review it. Forms and guidelines contains a lot of the same documentation that you see on the Mentor site. There is more information at the bottom about NYC Department of Education. So if you can't find it on Mentor, check that out.
So just to say that one more time, so the DOE research, if you're approved at your home institution, which is what TC is, we're your TC IRB home institution, then you can submit to DOE IRB. So they require that you submit a approval letter from us to do research at DOE site locations. So we'll take those questions at the very end. But no, please write them down. So just be mindful that you need to be approved at your home institution before you submit at DOE.
And we mentioned New York City public schools because that's where the majority of our research in public schools happens in this city. If you're working with a different school district in another city or country, or state or country, you still need to verify that either no IRB review is required by that institution or that you have submitted appropriately. If you're doing research in a hospital, if you're doing research in a private school, if you're doing research in a prison, in an after-school club, whichever institution is sponsoring that gathering needs to be alerted of your presence there. And if they have an IRB and they require your approval, you'll have to do that after you receive approval from TC.
All right, so do you want to do the mock run through? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen next. Please do not submit a protocol. Combination, we're just going to have her do it. I mentioned that because I don't want to have like 20 protocols going and be like, what's happening? Okay, so if you were to do it, she's going to show you how to do it. But if you were ready, you're going to go back to Mentor IRB. You're going to see on that page there is a tab that says New Protocol. you're going to click on Create New Protocol, which is what Eva's going to do now. But please don't do it on your own, but you can see that what it'll look like. So click Create New Protocol. The very first screen you're going to see is a prompt that says Faculty Sponsor. Now, just to clarify, faculty sponsor is the individual faculty member that is responsible for helping you create the methodological approach to the study and the ethical adherence that you're doing through the duration of the study and to ensure that it is in compliance. So that faculty sponsor serves as the individual helping you along the process as a role model for conducting ethical research. That person does not have to be your dissertation advisor. They could be somebody who's interested in your work, who's also a faculty member. It could be somebody who you want to be a co-PI with, but that can be any faculty member. If they're an outside faculty member, outside TC, maybe somebody at Columbia, we can talk about how to work that particular navigation system for that individual that does not have a TC unique.
You still, everyone needs a faculty sponsor unless you are faculty yourself.
So what Eva's doing right now is she is creating a faculty, she's creating a new protocol. She's listing me as a faculty sponsor. It is a mock. I get an email, which I'm just going to get my laptop in just a second. I'm going to check my email. Now, as a faculty sponsor, I get an automatic email that says something like, this student is starting a protocol. Are you cool with that? Very technical, right? Then I have to, as a faculty sponsor, click this link, which is going to take me to her protocol. Then I have to choose no response, reject, or approve, or accept. Right? I can choose to reject it, because that's my role as a faculty sponsor. Maybe I don't agree with the research. Hopefully you've had a conversation with your faculty sponsor ahead of time, so you're not crying very sad unicorn tears. Okay, so assuming that this all works out, your faculty sponsor would accept, and then at that point you can submit the protocol in its entirety. Now, if the protocol is not accepted by your faculty sponsor, it will sit in limbo forever, and we will never know, ever. So please be in clear communication with your faculty sponsor about clicking accept. Now, if your faculty sponsor might be a little bit technologically challenged, we'll say, we can send reminder emails to the faculty sponsor to remind this individual to check that little link and then click accept. If you need a phone intervention, I'm happy to call the faculty sponsor and help you out. So we'll do everything we can to move this process along. So I should have an email, which would
not yet.
Yeah.
She actually, your faculty sponsor will not get an email until this form is completed. This is item 1 on that 5-item checklist for your application that we showed you. This is the digital survey. Everything you enter here should match what you're saying on your protocol. So don't say 50 participants here and 100 on your protocol. Make sure that one hand is talking to the other. The fields with the red star have to be completed. You may want to complete others. They may not apply to you. You'll notice a start date is required, but an end date is not. If you don't alert us of an end date, that's fine. Automatically every year, a protocol needs to be reviewed. So if you don't tell us your end date in a year, in 11 months, you'll get a message saying your protocol is about to expire. Please submit for a continuing review. So that's not quite as important, but be aware that every year you'll have to renew your protocol with us.
So I'm going to jump in for just a second. The number of participants. Now, please be mindful that if you go under your projected number of participants, fine, perfect. If you say you're going to interview 100 teachers and you interview 2, fine, we are not concerned. If you say you're going to interview 100 teachers and you interview 200, now we're in a situation. You cannot exceed the number of projected participants in your study. But that doesn't mean you can't add to your population numbers. Once you're approved, if you say you're going to interview 100 teachers and now you want to add 100 more, you would submit a modification to your approved protocol. And that's perfectly fine. So please project high, but reasonably high.
Don't put 1 million.
Don't put 1 million.
We know that's not going to happen.
We will know. And then, because we'll also be like, well, I mean, how realistic are you to get 1 million people? But the point is that project higher than you expect, reasonably. But if you do need more, you need to add more numbers, you can always submit a modification after.
That's good advice for duration of activities as well. If you think it's going to take 45 minutes, put 45 to 60, just to be safe. One thing that recently has caused a lot of delay with PI's protocols is choosing the review type. The default is full review, unfortunately. Most of you will not be full board reviews. Most of you will be expedited or exempt. So please don't skip over that. There is no star next to it, so there's not much there to grab your eyes, but please pull down the menu and select the review category that actually applies to your work. If you choose full board review and you're not, we won't know that until the committee meets to review your protocol. So that's time that you didn't need to be spent on that.
We do try to catch those things in the administrative review as best as we can, but it's better you catch it at the forefront then.
As soon as you pick a review category, the view will change. There are 3 different surveys, one for each category of review. The first thing you'll be asked is to choose the option that you think best fits your protocol. This is you saying, this is why it's exempt, this is why it's expedited, this is why it's full board. Choose one. If you're not sure, give us a call, go to the website, check out those review categories. There are several options. This is just an example, so I'm clicking the first one out of ease. There are various questions about your research. Like I said, make sure it matches what you put in your protocol. Places for you to type longer responses. Then at the very bottom, you'll be asked to upload 2 things. The protocol, which we saw together, and then also your consent form. You can upload more than one consent document, and some of you will have to do that, especially if you're working with minors. If you think that something might be confusing in the naming of your documents or the placement of them, there's a place for you to leave a message to the IRB chair. It's just a message to us to let us know, but please don't upload anything else yet. There will be a place for you to upload your survey instruments, your flyers, things like that later. So I'm going to do that quickly just so you can see what it will look like.
And while she's setting that up, we typically recommend that you name your files that you're uploading with your last name dash whatever it is. So if it's Luna-Lucero dash adult consent form, Luna-Lucero dash recruitment script. Basically, you're going to be uploading all of those additional documents into categories. You're going to be uploading these recruitment script in the recruitment script category, the flyer into the recruitment materials category. So all of those things have a place for them, and if you're naming them to match the category, it just makes it much easier for us while we're scanning the document. So the easier it makes it for our eyes to see that everything is a full package, the faster you get pushed along. Or if there's something that we see that's out of place, we can help you administratively to fix it before the committee sees it. So again, just pushing your process along faster.
So far I haven't submitted anything. The IRB doesn't know about me yet. My faculty sponsor doesn't know about me yet. Hit save. If you hit cancel, you'll lose everything you type. So be very careful at this point. Hit save. That's when the notification is sent to your faculty sponsor. The IRB still doesn't know about you yet, but your faculty sponsor does. Once he or she accepts it, I wish you could see a little better. It says not accepted for me. Once she accepts it, it will say accepted. So you'll need to log back onto Mentor. Give it a couple days. Our faculty is busy, but do check back in. Once you see that it's been accepted, then we can proceed with the next step.
So if you just go ahead and click on Submit Protocol to Review, if she were to try that right now without the faculty accepting it, they're going to get this error message. Which if you're getting this error message, that means we've never seen your protocol. So make sure that your faculty sponsor has accepted that protocol before it just sits in limbo forever. All right, so I'm going to accept it. So the faculty sponsor gets an email, and I'll just kind of give you a quick little summary of what it says. This message serves to notify you that the student investigator, Eva, wishes to submit the following study. It has the study title. It has the, in order to acknowledge your sponsorship of the protocol, please log on to Mentor and accept it. Now there's a link on the email itself, which makes it so easy for faculty sponsors. They click on the link and it takes them directly to that protocol. We feel your pain, so we're trying to do our best to help. The next thing that the faculty sponsor sees is the protocol, which is exactly what's up here, plus a little tab that says faculty sponsor action. If I click on that, faculty sponsor action, as a faculty sponsor, I can choose again to not yet accept, I can choose to reject, or I can choose to accept. So I'm going to accept Eva's protocol, and I'm going to update the status, and now it's accepted. And she refreshes.
Yeah. So now it does say accepted. If you scroll to this is in my protocol. So I am now in my protocol. You'll hear that lingo a little bit. When you go to the bottom of your protocol, you'll see the documents that we've already uploaded. I'm not done yet. I still have my questionnaire, my pre and post test, and I still have my interview questions, and I have my flyer. I want the IRB to see those things so that I can use them. I can't use them unless they've been approved. Even if your protocol is exempt, we need to review it in order to say it's exempt. So it might seem a little backwards, but we need to see everything that you're going to be using. So at the very top, there's a button that says Upload Docs. That wasn't there before. So if you're not seeing that, that's another indication that either faculty sponsor hasn't accepted it or you haven't completed the process as far along as you thought you had. So I'm going to click Upload Docs. Please don't leave it under additional documentation if you can put it somewhere else. There's a variety of options: consent form, focus group protocol, notifications, recruitment materials, study instruments, memos. Put it where it makes the most sense, because as you're doing your research, you'll accumulate more documentation. We'll be sending you notifications, and it's going to, right now there's not a lot of things to look at, but as you accumulate more information, you want it to be organized, especially if your study is going to span several months or years.
And so another note, it makes it even more valuable when you're naming those Word documents to match your last name and then whatever you're saving it as, recruitment flyer, etc., because then it's very easy for us to see what's missing, what's there. Now that's even more so important for individuals that are conducting international work or work with bilingual participants. For example, you may have consent form English, a consent form Spanish, consent form Chinese, and all of those things we have to review, we have to stamp for approval. Now if we can see it's all clearly organized, it just makes our administrative process that much faster for you.
Once you've submitted, you'll find out whether your protocol has been approved, rejected, or accepted with revisions. You'll receive a notification. If you're really, if you're watching Mentor, you can log in every day and check the status. I see here that my faculty sponsor has accepted, but I also see exemption requested. It will say exemption verified once it's been approved. But you'll also have a new document at the bottom of your protocol. You'll have an approval letter. You'll get an email notification, but if you lose the email, you're not getting the email, you're not sure, it will also be here in your protocol. That's something that you can show schools, but also something that you have to feel comfortable. Like, you have IRB approval, you're now allowed to research. You cannot recruit subjects, you cannot do any data collection, you cannot engage with your data unless you have approval from us.
You see this tab right here that's highlighted modifications. After you've been approved, that's where you would submit those modifications that we talked about earlier. Adding your population, increasing your population, increasing a new site location, all of those modifications will happen after you've been approved. You'll see it's inactive for her right now, so she can't do any modifications because it's not approved. Once it's approved, a little button will show up that says new modification.
Now suppose you submit a modification. You're waiting for our approval. You cannot enact any of those changes that you've proposed until you get another approval letter saying that the modifications have been approved. If you do, that data may most likely not be usable.
So can you just go up to messages real quick? So you'll also see in your protocol there's a little icon that says messages. This is your way to communicate to us directly. We get this message from you that you can choose to include your faculty sponsor on these messages. You can just include us if that's appropriate to you. You'll see I'm there, Eva's there. You can send it to Kurt, who's one of our reviewers. Karen is the chair. So you can send those individual messages. We get all of those messages, and then we can link it to your protocol. So if there's something that comes up that you have a question about, you can do it that way.
I think we're encouraging everyone to use the messages function once you have a protocol in the system, as opposed to email, because even though email provides that record or the digital paper trail, this is attached to your protocol. So for your protection, if you were given advice or you asked us a question, there's a record of it attached to your protocol. Email is still great, but this feels a little more secure, so I think that's the suggestion we're making. You will get an email notification when we respond to your messages. So it's still linked to your email. You'll see the email, and then you'll log on to Mentor, and then you'll read what we wrote you and reply.
Yeah, so that is how to submit a protocol. Like, that's pretty much the gist of it. It's pretty intuitive. It's pretty, accessible once you start digging into it a little bit. You saw that Eva was listed as PI, so she's the primary investigator. She could also add research assistants to her protocol. You can be a doctoral student and add research assistants. That's your colleague, your classmates, etc. They have to be CITI certified. You have to upload their CITI certification. You have to link them to your protocol, but you can submit a modification after your protocol is approved to include research assistants onto your own protocol. And sometimes it's helpful if you're doing a larger study, you need assistance.
Now, had I known that I was going to have a research team, I could have put that information in when I applied. Typically, that happens after the fact, so you'll need to submit a modification. Your research coordinator or research assistant cannot start working on your research until we've verified their CITI certification and you've received the approval letter for the modification.
But the good news is once they are your research assistant, they can view your protocol, so they can see what's been submitted, etc., so they have access to that protocol.
If you have a team now that, or you're thinking of having one, encourage them to do the training. The CITI training is never a bad idea. It's never too soon to do that, and they'll need to upload their certificates to their account, not to your protocol. So just like you did yours.
Yeah. One little sidebar for this is that if you're doing a protocol, an IRB protocol after your dissertation proposal, so this is counting for your own doctoral work, your dissertation, you must be the PI. So you must be the primary investigator. You cannot be the research assistant, you can't be the research coordinator, you must be the primary investigator for your dissertation work. Okay, so let's see where we are in this PowerPoint slide. Okay, so we went through all of these, so I feel very super excited that we did that. We talked about exempt and expedited. We talked about full board review. All right, very side note, if you're coordinating with other institutions, say you are working at TC, you're doing a study and you're connecting with Yale, there is information that we can give you, but we can work on it with you on a case-by-case basis. So this is information if you're in this circumstance, but we'll work with you on a case-by-case basis in that regard.
A small portion of the TC population will do medical or clinical research. In that case, our IRB may defer, the TC IRB may defer to the IRB of that institution. But
as always, it depends.
It depends. Everything's in that respect a case-by-case basis.
All right, so let's look at this timeline a little bit again. So we have completed our CITI certificate, yippee. We found our faculty sponsor, woohoo. We are preparing our stuff, we did that. We had a proposal hearing. Congratulations, now you're submitting that IRB. Remember, it's about the middle of your timeline. You get revisions, we will wait for you to respond to those revisions. If you never respond to them, you may never get approved. So please make sure you're checking in on your protocol regarding those revisions. And then you research, and that's amazing, change the world for the better. Woohoo, that's great. And then update the IRB if you have any modifications. If you want to continue your protocol beyond the year that you're given, or if you are done with research. Done means that you're no longer accessing the data at all, not in for data analysis, you're done. It's like in a box and taped shut, then you terminate. Yay. So you are an IRB rock star. All right, so I know we have a little bit of time and kind of push that time limit a little bit, but any questions?
Uh-oh. It just automatically turns off at 8? You're done.
We just made it. That was high five, Eva.
Well, it's a little after. But,
okay.
I'm sorry, guys.
All right, so it's not going to go here real quick.
No, you only do teachers who work at the DOE. You want to study teachers at the DOE.
Wait, you want to study teachers who are at DOE schools?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Do you know
We
what?
still need IRB
Yes.
in the DOE.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's at their site. If you're meeting them like in a coffee shop, no.
Okay.
Well, it depends. But
There we go. I got it.
Okay.
This wasn't screwed in.
Yes.
So you said there's every year that we need to renew our protocols, and then the thing is, so you mean that if within 1 year I finish collecting my data and analyzing the data, or send out papers for like draft papers for journal review, and then I can stop renew?
So if you need, if you're going to still go back to that data, you can renew. Thank you so much.
No problem.
But
Have a good night. Thank you for coming.
What if later on I need to revise the draft, and I still have to
Yeah.
I have to renew.
Yeah, yeah. So basically the idea is that if you're interacting with, so just very quickly, the question was, at what point do you continue your protocol or you terminate? If you're interacting with your data at all, continue. So if you're drafting your paper and then you're like, oh, was that like whatever and whatever, I should go back to the survey, do a continuing review. Termination is you're done. Like you're done, the paper is got your Nobel Prize.
You can be writing your dissertation, you can be writing your concluding thoughts, you can be making the poster for your presentation, that's fine. But as long as you're looking at your numbers or your interview responses, you're still in the research phase, so you need to do the continuing review. And that's another group you'll need to submit 2 of your most recent consent forms. So hang on to those, put them in a safe place. It is your responsibility to keep those safe.
Okay, so I put you and then I go back again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if for describing activities on your protocol, if you're doing something like classroom observations and or looking at like student homework and things like that, and you said there's like a time. If I'm like doing classroom observations for every class for like a semester,
Yes, I describe it.
do I just describe it like that, and like so each class session is 60 minutes?
I would do it in days,
Right,
right?
you can do it that, I mean, I've seen it multiple
12
ways.
days of classroom observation.
60 minutes each day, total day.
Okay,
You know,
so
so it's
that's-
going to be
okay.
kind of that like, I don't know, it's like 6 days, 45 minutes each day, total time, blah, blah, you know, etc.
Right.
That's how the framing is going to be.
Okay.
And if you're collecting, say, student samples, you're not including that in the time necessarily.
It's just that.
But you're
That's your
just
time.
activity.
We don't
That's
care about
your
how long
time.
it takes
Some
you to
people
do
do
that.
that, but
We do, but we don't.
So, one teeny question, when you terminate, you terminate electronically?
Yes, yes, so everything's done through Mentor. You'll get an annual review every year, so annual review is kind of redundant, but that's fine. So you get an annual review that's like, do you want to continue or do you want to terminate? And at that point, you're like, phew, all my data's boxed up in a closet in a safe, protected place. I want to terminate.
And all your stuff stays.
Everything.
It'll still be there. We can still access it. It will just be closed. Yeah.
And one last question, for the babies, if you conduct research, but you have the parental permission, but you have babies like 9 months, 12 months.
Oh, yeah, no, that's, yeah, that's the it depends part, right? So they do not have to.
Exactly.
We would waive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's a waiver.
That's a waive consent because they are not able to.
As long as the
consent.
parent is
Yes,
assigned.
exactly. Yes, yes. I mean, there are like kindergartner kids that they can, you know, hear the information and nod their head. Yeah, they should be able to have an assent process, but in that case, they're. I'm gonna go here now.
Yeah, just continue to Ben's question. So Ben, you're asking about the IRB, right?
Yeah.
So like if whatever I'm doing, like let's say sometimes I go to the school and then with the teacher's permission, and then with if I want to do with the observation, whatever is my notes, like for conference proposal or for any of the research work that I want to use that data set, so that I have to go through the IRB before I can really go and all.
Yes, because it's public. Because
Okay.
now you're presenting the data you collected
To
publicly.
other people, right?
If you're only doing it for a classroom and only people are seeing it in the classroom, no. But if you're going to be presenting it at a conference, publication, etc., yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
My question is kind of related to this question as well. What if my research does not involve any human subjects? Like,
Oh, like you're looking at books or something?
yeah, like document analysis or
Yeah, it's exempt.
Is it for your dissertation?
Yeah, that was exactly
Sorry.
my next question. Yeah, no. So we finish each other's thoughts because that's how it works when you're in a shared office. All right, so her question was, if she's looking at non-human subjects for data collection, does she need IRB approval? No, unless you need it for your dissertation. The Office of Doctoral Studies requires that the IRB has looked at your dissertation work and said you do not need IRB approval. So in that case, you would submit an exempt protocol saying, I'm looking at these public documents that are, I don't know, whatever, papers, etc. They're non-human subjects. Then we say, cool, do your research, here's an approval letter, it is exempt. So basically, we're acknowledging that that protocol is exempt.
And those are pretty quick.
They're like super quick because
One
they're not
day.
involved in human subjects. But if you're doing it for your dissertation, you just need that letter from us so you can submit it with your graduation packet stuff. But if you're doing it pilot study, then have fun.
You can all do that tonight just for your
Yeah,
own, for your own information.
You can research
that's
any
fine.
book you want to research forever. Does that make sense? You just need it for the dissertation. Yeah.
Yeah, really quickly regarding the continuing review.
Yeah.
If you are in that write-up phase and there are no modifications necessary regarding your interaction with participants, do you just resubmit like the old protocol, or what updates are necessary?
No, it's like super simple. It's really just like, this is where I'm at in this.
You'll get a survey, like when you saw me do the protocol when I was submitting a new protocol, you'll get a little box pops up and there's a quick questionnaire and you have to upload 2 signed consent forms, and that's it. If you're terminating, the same thing happens. There's a pop-up questionnaire that you'll have to answer, and they're just asking where you are in your research, what you found, very general things. So,
Yeah,
you
you
can
just
wait
like
up
to
to
know the status of your work. And sometimes it's like, I haven't recruited yet, and sometimes there's a delay in a researcher's plan, and so they would just explain that in the review. Good question.
So let's say if I click a button to terminate my IRB, can I still activate after I click on the terminate?
No, it's terminated, you put flowers and you say bye. And then you have to do it over again if you want. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so cautious with PIs, primary investigators, right, to say like, terminate when you are absolutely sure you're done. Because once it's terminated, you have a moment of silence and light it.
So,
Go over here and I'll go back to you. Go ahead. Did you have a question? Oh, okay, sorry.
yeah, so just continue back to the question. So you don't have a deadline for renew?
If you're on a year, so.
Oh, it's just a year and a year, and then you don't have a limitation number of years that
I mean, like,
right?
maybe.
After about 5, we might come and just say, how you doing?
Right. How's the research coming?
Do you want
any
any
chocolate? Yeah, I mean, no, but.
Yeah, because that sometimes happens. Like I
Yeah.
know some faculty, like over here, like they have data sets that dating back to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Because they have everything there. They just don't have time working on it.
Yeah, and that happens. That happens. Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. You can just continue review, continue until you're done. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
So if you are working with IP and you hope to publish it someday, do you need an IRB approval or?
So some journals will actually call me and ask if a PI has IRB approval. It depends, again, that infamous response, but many journals will require an IRB approval letter for the research that is going to be published. So if you're planning to publish, submit an IRB.
But if it's just like, maybe one day I'll publish,
Right.
it's a lot to go through to obtain that IRB approval to then just file the paper in a binder. So the hope to publish has to be balanced with the reality of actually publishing. So we're not saying you're not allowed to submit your protocol to us, but if you don't have an idea of where it will be published, that's a good indication that it probably is not going to be the published piece that we all hope and know it could be. There's always a gray area if you find yourself in a debacle where you are going to publish something that never got IRB approval. Come see us, we'll see if we can figure out a way to make that compliant for you, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's trickier that way. Yeah, so if you're publishing something, you should be IRB.
Link to your question. Because I thought like that, I kind of hoped to publish it one day, but I was not sure, so I didn't go through it. And completed my AP, and now I want to actually want to publish it.
Come see us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or send us an email, yeah.
Come see us. Come see us, set up an email, come to bring your materials with you. We will have to see. I mean, that it's.
Even though it's not about human subjects.
Oh,
well then,
yeah.
is it for your dissertation?
It was for this. Well, not dissertation. It was my
Like
IP.
integrated project.
Yeah,
Oh.
I did it for my Master of Education thing, and I completed it, and I got.
Not involving human subjects.
No.
Not involving IRB.
Green light.
And I was like suggested from my advisor to like submit for publication.
Not human subjects.
so I don't have to go through this, I just, okay.
Yeah, we care about.
But there is like a reverse.
Don't say that word, la 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 la. I do not hear that word, come talk to us. Yeah, come talk to us, yeah.
But I'm a little confused now, because to just even think about writing a dissertation, you must go through IRB, even
Yes.
to be told that you're good, you're
Yes.
exempt.
Yes.
We're not comfortable saying you're exempt unless we've reviewed it to
Exactly.
determine
Yes.
it's exempt.
So isn't it the same thing when for me, one of my projects is to publish an article, period. So that's a must, before I even, so.
Publish on what though?
On a journal, like write an article on a
Sure,
journal.
is it with human subjects?
It could depend, I haven't written it yet. So should I go through you once I have my ideas ready and write the article, or should I do it before I even write the article so that I know what I'm
Well,
doing?
we're monitoring your research, not your article. So have you completed research that you're going to be writing about?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Exactly.
We're not reviewing your article. We'd love to read it.
I understand.
We're reviewing your research.
That's
And
what I
so,
mean, that
so there
before
can
I-
be no article until there is research. Is that research involving
No.
humans?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay.
Okay.
So yes, so I have to go through it.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, yeah.
Before I even write, meaning
Yeah.
before I even research.
Yeah, I mean, so these are those conversations that we have a lot with
Yes.
researchers, because we're like, well, it depends, maybe okay sometimes, but we will defer you to the website. There's a clear memo that kind of describes the outline of what we're going to be talking about, but in the it depends moments, we can have those individual conversations to figure out what we need to.
I guess my question was not, obviously, before you do research, you must go through IRB. My question was not that. It was just like you have to go through IRB to be exempt for your dissertation. Do you have to go through IRB to be exempt for an article before you research for that article as well? As if it was just like you do with the dissertation. That's what I meant.
I mean, if I were going to write an article for mathematics teacher on a really great lesson plan on finding the area of a square. No, of course not. But if I'm going to, still, same journal, if I'm going to write an article about my students' work and my evaluation of their work and my interviews with them, yeah,
Right.
now I
Okay.
do. So it really depends on what your article, what you're
Right.
writing about.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, these are those conversations that we have all the time. So it's sort of like, well.
The purpose of this weird advice we're giving you is to prevent every single student here from applying for IRB review. The reality is they're not. If we say, well, is it going to be published? Everyone says yes, because yes, of course my work will be published. The reality is, it may not be. If it's not going to be a class project.
Yeah, so
If
we're
it's not
always
going
keeping those
anywhere.
things in mind. Yeah.
Well,
But that's a good question.
Yeah, well, in my case, unless I get published, I can't finish.
So your goal is publication, and you're working with human subjects. So it sounds like
Exactly. Thank you.
Yay, excellent.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Any other questions? Okay.
And that's the final
Yes,
one,
sure.
yes. So if I'm the one who designed the research,
Okay.
the whole study, all the curriculum materials that need to be used, but I'm not the one who actually carried out the study. I don't need to
Okay.
go through the IRB. I just need to submit a form for assessing the data,
Yeah.
for analysis.
Yeah, you can have a letter of agreement, or you can be the research assistant on that protocol. If you're analyzing the data, you need to be included in some way in that protocol, whether it's the research assistant or the primary investigator saying that we all agree that you're going to be analyzing the data. But that's the primary investigator's responsibility to coordinate all that, so you are included. Because basically you want to be included so you can be part of the publication.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
okay.
so much.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Thank you for your attention.
Yeah.
Phew, IRB.
Happy researching, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, you want to stop? Oh, that's okay.
No, it's fine. It's fine. That's what we're here for.
I'll just